My name is Logan Stotts. I'm a Mohawk from Six Nations. I grew up in Brantford and Six Nations, back and forth kind of. I first realized, I wanted to be a musician when I was really, really young. It was kind of a dream that I had. I did a lot of singing, like walking back to school and walking home from school. I was always singing, and it was something that I really enjoyed, but I didn't really realize at the time that it could be a career. But the biggest step that I took was gaining the support of my family. And in order to do that, I remember being young, and my parents, they're like, okay, if you want to be a musician, you have to have some sort of backup plan in place, right? So I went to high school and then I went to trade school. And I spent 4 years in trade school and on the field being a welder, and kind of had that backup plan. And that was super important, with gaining the support of my family. Everyone has their own route they have to take, and it can be very different. And to be successful, you kind of have to build your own staircase to get to the top. One of the biggest things that feeds my soul and that I find valuable, is just being able to connect with people. And at first, it's not always about, the money that you're making, because in the business, you got to build that up and you got to cultivate that kind of financial freedom. But you find your wealth in different ways, like the people that I get to meet and the places that I get to go in the world. Those are some of the things that I value, and the relationships that I've got to build. I've met so many great people and met so many great musicians. My personality traits, I think I'm super stubborn. I don't think I will ever give up, and I think that's so important in this industry, because you hit walls every day. When you break through them, there's always something monumental on the other side of that wall. My biggest piece of advice, if you connect with music and you connect with the arts, is it's a very emotional thing, and it's, you really, really feel good songs with your heart, and you really just gotta follow that. There's so many other areas in the music business to consider, just because teamwork is so important in the music industry. I have a team of 10 people, agents, managers, sound people. Without a whole team working together, it's really, really hard to be successful. You just gotta really, really be able to push through and keep going and really, really believe in your craft and really, really take the steps to hone your craft in every single way. There's tons of people like that who are kind of like, you're never gonna make it. But what I've always tried to do is just make it, and really, really kind of prove them wrong.
My name is David A. Robertson. I am a writer and I live in Winnipeg, and my home community is Norway House Cree Nation. In terms of further education, I went to university. What was most effective for me was my professor in my English courses. He was able to read a lot of the things I was writing and to give me some really great constructive feedback on my work. The pathway to my career as a writer is probably atypical, because I think most pathways are atypical. I think that every writer has their own journey in getting to where they've got. I've always wanted to be a writer since I was in grade 3. And so for me, the direct path was when I was 8 years old to start writing stuff. I worked very hard at the success, but really the hard work has been the roadblock of procrastination. When you want to write something but you don't, and so you do it, you have to have the discipline to be able to do it anyway. In terms of personality traits for the career that I do as a writer, I think one of it is to have a passion to tell stories, to have a passion to tell truth. Having that passion is probably the most important thing, and the passion to create. What I value the most in the career that I've chosen is the ability to reach people. The fact that I'm a published writer, it doesn't mean that my stories have more value than yours. The minute that you put down pen to paper and tell a story, you're a writer too.
My name is Cree Bell. I grew up in Rockton. My kind of track interest, it was kind of like a mixture between an interest and a skill. Besides track, I'd say one of my biggest skills is my art. I believe that track has not only kind of guided my goals into what I want my career and my future to be like, but also like the skills and the kind of characteristics it takes to be an athlete help me in terms of school and everyday life. As an athlete, it provides a lot of opportunities. For example, to be a D1 athlete or get a scholarship, which is obviously my goal, I've had a couple, it provides so many opportunities to see the world. So like your legs can take you everywhere. If I'm outgoing, I'm able to speak my mind. I'm not really too shy. I'm also kind of like a perfectionist and dedicated, so everything I do has to be perfect, which is good for school and track, of course. My biggest mentor, number one, without any question, is my dad. He has been my coach since I was 7. I've had other coaches along the way, but he's been my main coach. He's been my biggest supporter, my biggest motivator, everything you'd want in a coach, and a father. You have to make sure that you're really dedicated to what you do. Don't let your friends or peer pressure or anything that you don't believe that you should be doing interfere with your goals, of course. When you're older, obviously you're going to have a life, you're going to have to go to your job, you're going to have to be dedicated to your job, dedicated to university, studying for exams, all that, which really guides you on your path to the rest of your life. I've definitely faced some roadblocks in terms of just overworking myself. I do a lot of studying, do a lot of all my homework and all that. I'm really dedicated to that, as well as training, a lot of training. This past year especially, I really suffered with just kind of like a mental burnout. I was really down, I wasn't confident in myself, and all I can stress over and over and over again is just believe in yourself.
My name is David Moses. I currently am a radio journalist and a show host at Element FM in Toronto, and Element FM broadcasts to Toronto and Ottawa. I'm a member of what's called the Lenape Nation, or the Delaware Nation more commonly. And the Delaware people are not Haudenosaunee or Six Nations. They are actually from the state of Delaware, what we now call the state of Delaware in the United States. I did not take a direct route to post-secondary. I, in fact, went back to school after 10 years of being out of school. I enrolled at York University for theater, and I graduated 4 years later with an honors degree in theater. I knew nothing about my Indigenous heritage when I grew up. Zero. It left a huge hole in my life. So I felt I needed to find out. And even though I was threatened with disownership and told that I shouldn't go anywhere near that side of my heritage, you don't want to know that, I said, I have to. And all I knew were two things at the time: Six Nations and Delaware. That's all I knew. I didn't know my father. I only knew a few things about him. They weren't good. And I did meet him. And when I did meet him, he thought I was his grandson. But I opened that door. I drove up to Six Nations. They had a radio station. Being a musician, I automatically thought, hey. So I made some station IDs for them. I took it into the station because I had a little recording studio at home. And I took it in and I said, would you guys like to use these station IDs? And the station manager gave me the once over. You know, he looks at me and very sternly, doesn't know who I am, takes it into the production room, plays them, and he goes, sure. So that opened the door for me to volunteer at the radio station. And it was familiar to me. I found some familiar ground because of music. So I started listening more to the music, I started listening more to the station, I started hanging around and volunteering at the station. That led to an opportunity for a job that came up in news. I thought, well, I've studied voice, certainly I could do that side of it, but I don't know much about the community. But guess what? I can't think of a better way to immerse myself and learn about the community. So I applied for the job, and I got the job. And boy, did I ever make a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, but it was a huge and fascinating and the best thing I ever did. It opened so many doors for me. It taught me so much about so many things. What I really value about the job is, one, the fact that I learned something, but also the fact that I am sharing important issues with people who are listening, and I am bringing knowledge through our guests to a greater population. If you're interviewing people, you have to be able to listen very well, and you have to be willing to put yourself out there, because you're a representative of the network you're fronting, and you have to be sure that you're able to do that well. I don't consider myself an extrovert. I'm quite an introvert, but the fact that I am passionate about what I like to share and have people learn, and especially in terms of Indigenous knowledge and those things that need to get out there, that's what has to be done if I want to do this job. You never know how that door might open for you. Just keep going. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask people that are in the industry if they can give you 5 minutes or give you some advice. There is nothing that, if you want to set your mind to it, that you cannot do if you take short, small steps towards those goals. You might not get there next week, and it might not be a straight road to get there. It might be a real twisty, windy road. Just work towards it.